Okay. Sir, microphone. We have somebody with a microphone.
Hi, and thank you for so much for the conversation. My name is Roy Schwartz-Tichon from Harvard Training School, Master of Public Policy. I wanted to ask you, what could you do differently to be the Prime Minister and move some of your agenda?
Do you want to take a series of them? Or one by
Yes,
one?
because we are very conscious of your time and we have about 20 minutes before the reception. So maybe three questions, round of three questions, and then I'll answer them in one go.
Okay.
Hi, thank you, Kupita. I'm Sia from the School of Public Health at Harvard, and I was in your study group yesterday. I'm also from Malaysia. So just taking a step back on the role of ASEAN, I wanted to ask, what is your vision for ASEAN and the role that it will play in the region? I mean, it was formed in 1967, and it was founded on principles of non-interference and consensus decision making. So, yeah, what's your vision for it? Thank you.
Maybe from this, yes, please.
Hi, my name is Jamin and I'm from the business school. I'm doing my MBA there. I'm curious because the solutions that you put up all sound very exciting, innovation, R&D, infrastructure building, and that actually requires a lot of financial resources and on top of that political will. So how do you think about managing that and where do you think that's going to come from?
Okay, thank you very much.
Maybe we'll add one more from online. Do we have
Okay.
any, I'm looking for our designated, Ken, where are you? Do we have any? Maybe one from online?
We have one question from our online audience, a listener from Myanmar. The question is, thank you so much for sharing us your insights based on your experiences. I am from Myanmar and have been to Thailand multiple times. My question for you is, what are your thoughts on the fashion shopping industry and its sustainability effect in Thailand?
Fashion shopping?
I'm reading what's down there.
Fashion shopping industry.
Fashion shopping industry and its sustainability effect in Thailand.
I shop second hands mostly. I got a Barber jacket, which is very nice when I brought it to Harvard, and it's second hand because I don't usually go with the fast fashion thing. But I'll address that as well. Okay, so the first question was about what I could have done differently to become the Prime Minister. I should have won more. I got only 40% of the votes, and I campaigned very hard for about 90 days. No regrets, no time for regrets. I did everything I could with the amount of resources that I had, that we had, and we work as a team. We really used, the Harvard Kennedy School campaign management playbook in order for us to come up with that. So I'm very proud of what I had achieved. I felt like I have left my dent in the universe, and I'll try again in 10 years when I'm 51. A few things that I felt like it could have been different is that, I remember I was citing Kevin McCarthy's bid for House Speaker here in the US. He went for 15 times. And I felt like my bid to become the Prime Minister was only one time, and it should have been more. Because, when you vote when you select the leader of the country, you should really try your best to follow the mandate of the votes. If you stop by the first time and you disenfranchise 14 million votes and you couldn't let it become the second time and the third time, and the quorum was really the issue. The senators, we, of course, then with 250 appointed senators, they pretty much 50 of them did not show up for quorum to choose the Prime Minister. If they had shown up for quorum, some of them had promised on television, some of them promised me personally that they will vote for me. So if that 50 that were missing that day showed up for quorum, the situation might have been different. On role of ASEAN, in a sentence, non-interference or non-indifference. We definitely really have to ask ourselves. that the role of ASEAN to achieve the historical achievement that we had done back in the days, and also the future potential that we do together. Yes, non-interference, but does it mean that you can be non-indifferent with what's going on? For example, in the case of Myanmar, we have that 5-point consensus back maybe 3-4 years back. It might be time to turn it into a 5-year roadmap. Otherwise, it will be just 5-point consensus, it will be just the bullet points. But there's no concrete planning of what it is like to find the right amount of incentive, the right amount of pressure, so that the people of Myanmar can return to democracy and think about what post-conflict Myanmar would look like, and reduce the risk of balkanization. And that's something that we really need to be thinking about. And also, in terms of fashion industry, the exploitation of labor, because we share the proximity of asset and the proximity of burden of about 2,700 kilometers between Myanmar and Thailand. If they sneeze, we get sick as well. So it's not like we are trying to interfere with them or anything like that, but the risk of ignoring or the risk of being indifferent with what's going on, it will spill over to Thailand in terms of the climate, in terms of online scams and all that. The last one, because I answered 1, 2, and then I skipped to 4 in terms of financial, legal, political. That's how I started the talk. I said it will be a continuation, but there will be some differences. I mentioned all these strategies, dementia village and sponge city and all these new ideas to make sure that Thailand can capitalize on these opportunities. Obviously, there's enablers that I didn't talk about, which is financial enablers, legal enablers, and also political will enablers. Those are the things that we'll probably have to talk in some other time. But I think, when it comes to climate change, for example, we were trying to say that it has to be a green budgeting and allocate 10% of the national budget to be exactly targeting or tackling on the climate change risk, because it's so high for Thailand, for example. That will be it for this round.
Another round, maybe we'll start at this side of the room. Anybody? Okay, wait for the mic, please. Microphone?
First of all,
Mr. Hahn.
my bad. First of all, thank you for this great informative talk, and especially for all your service to our country. My name is Sita Tantuko. I'm a student at MIT, and my question.
That's a running joke.
And my question relates to the point you made at the start about the rise of billionaires, and I would just call them oligarchs in Thailand. In terms of economic reform that would eliminate them and provide more equality to the country, my understanding is that addressing the structure would inevitably cause the growth to slow even further as we adjust businesses and change structures in our economy. In that case, the support of the democratic process and the ruling government would plummet due to the people economic downturn temporarily. I would like to ask you, as an experienced politician, how would you reassure the people that things would get better during those reform if you had the chance to make it eventually?
So you want me to sell you inclusive growth? That's essentially your question.
Exactly.
Well, economy. Okay, sorry. So we need 3 more. Yeah.
We're going to be efficient.
Thank you. Hello? Hello? Yes. Hello. Hi. My name is Stefan. I'm research professor at Chulalongkorn and at the economics department here. At Chulalongkorn, we are just setting up a group on competitiveness. So this is wonderful. You're miles ahead of what we're doing and thinking about. But one thing that lurks a little bit behind what you're saying here, which is the distribution of sectors in the Thai economy. Services is the strongest, agriculture is still very strong, and manufacturing is shrinking. But productivity is low in services, and the present government pushes for tourism, which is more of that, And how much productivity can you gain? You will never get a machine to massage two people at the same time. So, but you had nice words about tourism too. And there's another side to it, that tourism brings in foreign exchange, which pushes up the exchange rate, which creates Dutch disease for the manufacturing industry. So how do you solve this contradiction?
Let's
Type role within the People's Party, the next incarnation of Move Forward Party. What do you think is your strategy in a high level for addressing the challenges faced in recent elections and overcoming those obstacles for the next round of parliamentary races?
Okay, I'm gonna Tarantino it and answer the last question first, because that's a trap. I'm not a consultant, and that's against the law. So, that's almost like the election commission the webinar and like put a poison pill into that question. So first of all, that's why I had to address that question first. This is going live and it's going to be digital footprint. So I'm not a consultant to the People's Party. I'm basically a regular Thai, which can help them with campaign according to the law. I could sign up for a minimum wage to go on stage and do a big speech rally for them according to the law. But I totally believe in the leadership of the People's Party, or the party version of 3.0. I'm the 2.0 guy. They're the 3.0. I think they're going through a crystallization process. Crystallization process requires time, requires heat, and requires pressure. So that's what the leadership is going through. So I mean, if they're going through it, they'll be gem. If they don't go through it, they'll become ash. So I feel like they can have their own strategy and decide on what's going to be the strategy for them going forward. Back to question number one, economic, selling you inclusive growth. Growing the economy while reducing inequality. I think the first two slides is just a data-driven solution that answers why we can't think about the trickle-down economics and thinking about inviting big businesses to come invest in Thailand and export it out, and make sure that low wage is the only competitive advantage of our nation. Because you can see from growing 7%, that might have worked, back in the days, but then as the world changes, as the Thai population changes, it becomes by 2%. So again, if you are a leader of any group, you want to be able to divide and conquer and use every single resources in your country to gain competitive advantage, and not just a few. And in order for them to do that, for example, you can avoid the Dutch disease by having more local markets. Your labor will become more productive as they have a better living stage of living. You could really think about how to capitalize on technologies to reduce pain points of the people. That's a lot of money that we're talking about here. So it will benefit everyone, and it will bring the country up to par with our peers. Economic structure, econ complexity. I need to rephrase the question a little bit. In terms of agriculture, 40% of the population is still in agricultural sector, but it contributes only 8% of the GDP. So to really say that it's a productive sector, maybe that's really the pain point that we really need to think about, of how to increase the productivity in agriculture. And that's why I was offering low carbon agriculture, precision agriculture, drip irrigation, robotics. If we were to be good at robotics, it has to be something to do with agricultural robotics and mechanization. Not something like, robotics when you compare to South Korea, where like this and they're like this already. So it has to be a niche innovation. I thought about this economic complexity from Professor Hausman's class. He teaches about why countries are poor, volatile, and unequal. And the more complex the economic structure is, usually it leads to the advancement because of risk diversification. But for Thailand, if you talk about automotive, electronics, and tourism, and if COVID hits, boom, done. If EV comes, boom. If semiconductor that is going on in Taiwan, and the South Koreans are investing a lot in Vietnam, gone. So we have to really utilize the existing capability and find our niche going forward, which is the silicon carbide that I was telling you about. Klong Tơi. You know, the inclusion of land development, it begins with the first slide that I was talking to you about, in terms of land ownership. Because if you look at the overall land ownership, the government owns about half, let's say it's half, I can't remember the exact number, but let's say it's 50% is owned by the government itself. And then the rest becomes the private land. And I compare that with Germany, I compare that with Sweden, I compare that with America. The government owns way too much. Military owns way too much land. And in terms of private, it's so unequal as I showed it to you. So yes, you can fix community by community. You can go to Klong Tơi, you can go to Bang Khae, you can go to Khon Kaen in various parts and try to include them in the development, and we're going to have some parks and make sure it's vertical living and they can be there so that I could have my luxury condos over here. I mean, it's micro fixing. I mean, it's good for you to do that and keep them some transition period before it becomes casino complexes and things like that. But I would look at it as a very macro level and see what it means to do a land justice. And that's something that I'm looking forward to learning here at Harvard, one of those things.
One more now?
Sure.
I think
We
we
still have time, but
Yeah, one more.
7 more minutes and then we're on.
We're so efficient. We're uber efficient.
We have to be.
So maybe start on this side of the room.
These people have a lot of things to do.
Yeah, we didn't quite get to you, so please.
Hi, Wata Kapoor from Harvard University. So I really love your plan, but it seems that there is an established institution.
Oh, you should have come to Qatar politics yesterday. Yes, I'll answer your question.
And
I
is
understand.
there anything that we as Thai citizens can do?
Okay, thank you.
Please, sir.
สวัสดีครับประโมทสุภปัญญา freelance scholar and visitors to Boston. And my question is, to my understanding, since the first national plan in 1963, and happened to me that the rich and the poor gap widening and widening, how you ensure that your crisis model would turn around at least or narrowing that gap. Thank you.
One chance over here. A very enthusiastic young lady in the back. Absolutely.
Thank you so much. My name is Ais Tukapornumwiti. I remember you mentioned about startup and you endorse tech community. And I also remember you suggest that startup, the owner of startup should move out of the country in order to grow at scale. And I would like to ask, from your knowledge of your resources, how would you help endorse them to grow at scale if you want to push this forward to a public of people in Thailand? And I actually own a startup company here too, and I did what you suggest. I moved out of the country to start a business here.
Maybe one
So
more.
we're ahead of the curve.
One more online.
Sorry.
Excellent. He's getting his steps in.
We have a question from a live audience in Thailand. Do you think much of these solutions will be impeded by the fact that it will be now near impossible to change the constitution?
Yes, I anticipated this kind of questions before. That's why I started the talk. That it's not going to be a political one, and there's political constraint, financial constraint, and legal constraint, which I intentionally left out of the presentation because that's another lecture. That's another thing that we talked about. Obviously, you have to follow your heart, but take your brain with you, and obviously we're trying to come up with innovative ideas to turn crisis into competitiveness. We have to think, without the constraints first and work backwards on how to fix the constraints, whether it's legal, whether it's financial, whether it's political will, which goes back to the first questions in terms of institutions blocking election results to become election outcome. That's essentially what it is in a sentence, that election victory does not translate to governance. The question becomes independent organizations, but independent of what? Independent of who, and who watches the watchdog. Yesterday at Pata in Politics, we did talk about this a little bit, but what we are trying to do and to make sure that the independent organizations are truly independent and linked to the people in terms, that's what democracy means, and that's on three things. First thing is on the origin of these independent organizations. Are they appointed or are they linked to the people in any way? Second is on the transparency. Obviously, there was a court order to dissolve political parties on and on, but you're never allowed to criticize the court. So there's no transparency on arguing back or using logic to really talk about whether it's legal, whether it makes sense, whether it's logical or not. And the third one is about accountability. How do you make sure that such a very big power, 9 people, 5 people, commission, whether it's election commission, whether it's anti-corruption commission, whether it's the court, just 7 to 9 people, it can, get rid of election winner, and also the prime minister. Was also removed. So it's not just a partisan issue, it's a bipartisan issue. But if you don't take care of the origin, the transparency, and the accountability of their decision, then we can never move beyond the cycle, vicious cycle that we see. And obviously, winning elections to be in the government and have enough votes to amend the constitution or to amend laws is something that is a stepping stone towards that institutional reform, constitutional justice that we were talking about. In terms of 1963, it's a Papat first plan on equality. I read that, and then I was working in the government before coming to the Kennedy School. I think that was maybe the 5th version or 6th version, and they were still talking about inequality. And then it was when I reached Kennedy School and I started to learn that inequality comes in various ways. Income equality is one, and that's usually what they talk about, measured by Gini coefficient.
Yep.
But then there's wealth inequality, land inequality, resource inequality, public health inequality, education inequality, access to power inequality. So if you just touch on just one particular popular inequality KPI, which the government talks about a lot, which is the income inequality, and you look at the Gini coefficient, it looks okay. It's not that bad. But the devil is in the detail, just as the first slide that I showed you in terms of deposit, in terms of land ownership. That's when you started to understand, inequality is not income. And when the government talks about Gini coefficient, it's not that bad. But if you look at all these land ownership concentration, wealth concentration, over-centralization in Bangkok public schools, that's when you start to understand that if this plan becomes the 100th plan, the gap is not going to go away. And that's why when we were campaigning, and we tackled the reform, the structure, the access to land ownership and things like that, and not just looking at the top quintile, the bottom quintile when it comes to income inequality. Last one was about unicorn, moving forward. The thing is, there's 2 animals that stop unicorn happening in Thailand, startups. The first one is the tiger, and the second one is the elephant. The bureaucracy of doing a lot of paper when you're trying to get grants from the government to be a startup, it improved a lot, to be fair. But in order for you to get into digital innovation or Thailand 4.0 grant or the startup grant, it's like a huge amount of pieces of paper that you need to do, and many criteria and many conditions, and also not very regional ambition focus. So that's why I felt like you have to move fast and break things, That's what startup is all about. You are disrupting things. It has to be very fast, very flexible in the way you want to do it. That's why you should be anywhere in the world, as long as you are linked to Thailand. That's how I'm going to change the innovation policy once I become the Prime Minister 10 years from now. I mean, otherwise last but not least, the tiger, the large conglomerates, the monopolies. You're in fintech and you want to do a digital wallet, you got to make sure you wait for the banks and all the retailers to have that permit first. And the people who grant all those permits from Bank of Thailand and people who work, well, not all, so I'm not accusing anyone, but some of the people who work from Bank of Thailand come from commercial banks. So I'm not saying that there's any correlation, but if you want to be in fintech, you want to do peer-to-peer lending, you want to do virtual banking and things like that, you got to get the permits, and the permits are somewhat related to the sleeping tigers in the Thai economy. So if we don't fix it to be firm ground, fair game, and then fast growth. You know, when the government talks about it, we want to be fast growth, let's do robotics, let's do genetics, talk about fair game, not using law as a barrier to entry and things like that. So you got to build it from the bottom up, because it's been proved again and again that trickle down economics doesn't work.
Fortunately, all good things must come to an end, but this doesn't quite end. In a moment, right outside, we're going to have a public reception, and Kubita will be here, mingle with you, get your photos and everything, so it's not quite over. But before we exit this beautiful hall, please join me first in thanking our online viewers. Our online viewers from Southeast Asia have been up since 2 a.m. tomorrow morning to tune in, so please join me. Please join me in expressing our deep appreciation to Kubita for so generously sharing his experience and insights with us. So the conversation continues right outside those doors.
เทียมค่ะ
พอดีเดี๋ยวห้องนี้ก็ดูเขาขอบคุณมากพี่มาจากนิวยอร์กเนี่ยใช่ครับเจอกันสุดท้ายที่แอมแทร็กเนาะใช่ครับจำได้
คุณเทียมโอ้ทอดจ้ะทอดนะคะไม่ขอโทษค่ะไม่เป็นไรเดินไม่ทัน
What do you think
เดินไม่ทันป้าไม่ทันคุณทิม
พูดดีมากเลยนะ
จ้าโอ้ยโทษค่ะสอเลยไหนล่ะคุณทิมอยู่นู่นดูสิคิวรอถ่ายรูปค่ะไหนคุณทิมอยู่ไหนเอ่ย
Sorry
ป้ามองไม่เห็นคุณทิมเลยอ่ะคุณทิมอยู่ไหนเนี่ยอ๋อต่อคิวครับถ่ายรูปต้นน่ะคุณทิมมารถต้น
ไม่ได้มารถต้น
มารถต้น
ไม่ใช่
ใช่
ไม่ใช่คุณทิมมาเอง
มารถต้นแหละ
ไม่ได้มารถต้น
เดี๋ยวป้าวางตรงนี้ก่อนนะป้าวางตรงนี้ก่อนไม่รู้ว่าภาพมันชัดหรือเปล่าค่ะ ป้าขอปิดไลฟ์นะคะป้าเอ็มขอปิดไลฟ์ขอบคุณทุกกำลังใจขอบคุณมากๆนะคะขอให้ทุกคนมีความสุขมากๆสวัสดีค่ะ
ดูคลิปจบแล้วอย่าลืมกดไลค์กดแชร์กดติดตามกดกระดิ่งให้ด้วยนะครับ